Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over the reactions from free agency. I was going to do this video a couple days ago, but I want to make sure that, for the most part, everything kind of shook out. Now we have a much better picture of how teams are going to look going into 2021, 2022. Obviously, we'll talk about the big contracts more often than not, and I'll give my take on the Sharks, obviously, as a Sharks fan, and I know them more than I know any other team, so I'll give my takes on them and what's going around the NHL. Guys, if you like the video, please give it a like if you do enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel. This will be the place to get all of the most in-depth and latest content in regards to NHL 22, so you don't want to miss out. All right, so let's just start at the top as former Carolina Hurricane and former Niagara Ice Dog. Dougie Hamilton signs the biggest contract really in free agency, getting $9 million for 7 years with the New Jersey Devils. Going into free agency, the New Jersey Devils had the second most cap space, only to Buffalo, and they definitely have a good young core, a little unproven, obviously, but it's just been a long time since New Jersey has had that feel of a great team. It's been a long time since Martin Brodeur and Niedermeyer and all those guys and the cup runs and the consistent playoff appearances. Just really isn't the same anymore in New Jersey, and they've just kind of had no identity over the last few seasons. Dougie Hamilton really changes that. Obviously, they get Luke Hughes in the draft. Jack Hughes has got another year under his belt. He sure as well. They could be really, really good, and Dougie Hamilton gives them that kind of stud free agent where, again, New Jersey just hasn't had one of those in a long time. Having watched Dougie Hamilton for a long time, he's a very, very good player. It is a little odd that he has been on so many teams. He's obviously been more of a little bit of an odd guy, I guess, in the locker room. That'd be the rumors and whatnot. I've met him personally. Great guy from what I've seen, from my experience with him, but other than that, just a phenomenal signing for New Jersey, and that really, really helps them. I think that they still aren't a playoff team this year coming up, but I think they're a lot closer than they were coming into this year. All right, next up, the biggest contract in terms of just dollars is Zach Hyman getting 7 years, $38.5 million total, and 5.5. This is one of those deals where Hyman is definitely a player you need on a Stanley Cup team. You need those guys that aren't the huge headline makers, but go in and do the tough stuff. And honestly, was one of Toronto's more important players. The problem is that these guys always get their stats, inflated, and that usually runs them out of town because it's just way more expensive to keep him. Zach Hyman's going to go from playing with Matthews, Marner, Nylander to playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. So he is a perfect fit for them. I think it's going to be really good, but I think in like 3 seasons, he's already 29, which just feels crazy to me. I feel like he's been, he isn't that old, but he's almost 30, and I think in the last 4 years of this contract, that's really where you see these guys just completely undervalue or give you in terms of production with what the contract's worth. However, it looks like Edmonton is just completely disregarding the future, and to be honest, I think that with the, McDavid coming up, in a few years, it's scary to think. So it'll be interesting to see, but they are definitely going all in right now, and Zach Hyman is a great fit for the team right now. Contract as it goes along, pretty tough. I'd love to hear what Oilers fans think. Leave your comment down below if you like the Hyman signing or if it scares you a little much and you think they should have gone another way. The next crazy one is Philip Grubauer going to the Seattle Kraken at 5.9, coming kind of out of nowhere because in terms of the defense and in net, Seattle felt kind of okay. They had Drieger, they signed him to an extension, they had Vitek Vanacek, but then they go out and get Philip Grubauer for $5.9 million and term, 6-year deal. He's 29 years old. He'll go until he's 35. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, this does not feel as effective and as well executed as what happened with Vegas. Because not only did the deal get signed for 5.9 for 6 years, they also messed up his contract, and the first pass literally got rejected because they didn't offer him, they front-loaded it too much in terms of actual dollars paid, and it actually got rejected. So it just looked really bad on their front office. It obviously got fixed and whatnot, but nonetheless, it's just very weird. It seems when they did their draft, I said this on the last kind of reaction video with the Kraken, that they didn't take a lot of the big name players, so obviously they weren't trying to go for it. That's fine. But they also didn't try and get players that they could flip into assets either. It just was extremely weird. I know that they are very heavy on analytics, and they wanted to kind of weaponize the cap space, but they signed a lot of guys we're going to talk about in a little bit, and gave them some term that it looks like it could be contracts that they don't want. Alexiak, that's an expensive one. He's a very, very good defenseman, but again, just a weird start to Seattle, but the Pacific Division's so wide open. I still don't expect the team to win 30 games, but Grubauer is definitely their number one goaltender now, so they've got their goaltender locked up for quite a while. Next guy we're going to talk about is a playoff hero in Philip Deneau. I don't know if there's ever been a time, maybe it's because it was a Canadian team, but a defensive center getting so much praise, even though he wasn't producing at all offensively. And on an offensively starved team, it just felt like he needed to produce that. But he wiped out top-line centers in the postseason and top lines. I mean, Mark Stone was just kind of invisible in Vegas, and he just played really well. So Philip Deneau now going to the Los Angeles Kings, and I'm not going to lie, as a Sharks fan, I thought they would be like 2 years away from being a perennial contender and a playoff team every year with that core that prospect core they have. It's a little bit quicker now, and I think that they are trying to make it so that Doughty and Kopitar don't have to wait around to the end of their careers before they're good. They're going to try and be good right now, because Kopitar and Deneau, regardless of point production, even though Kopitar is still elite in that regard, defensively it's disgusting. They have two Selke Trophy nominees basically down the middle, 1-2. You combine the fact that they've got Quentin Byfield now going to come up, like their team is really good, and they could. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they crush the Pacific Division and were like the third playoff team. It also wouldn't surprise me if they're not ready yet at all and, they don't make the playoffs and they come up quite short. But this signing was definitely impressive, and it definitely showed that they don't want to wait around any longer and they kind of want to just go for it now. And I think that's important for them specifically, although I really hope they don't do good. Next, in terms of biggest contract we're going to talk about is Jaden Schwartz, like I mentioned earlier, to the Seattle Kraken at 5.5 for 5 years. And again, a very good player, but kind of in that Zach Hyman mold. Like, he isn't going to drive play and isn't going to be your biggest point producer. And they signed him for quite a long time at 5.5. It really makes you wonder how that run at Landeskog went, and if they kind of cheaped out and then decided, okay, now we're going to go and we need some names and some free agents. It's just, I don't mind the signing at all. It's just, I think one of those contracts, again, in the later part, they might be a little tough, but nonetheless, I think it's still a decent signing. 5.5, maybe a little much, but they've got to get someone that can, score, or at least, do something offensively, because their offense is going to be quite starved. Following Jaden Schwartz, the next biggest AAV, Linus Ullmark, the Buffalo goaltender, getting 4 years, $5 million contract to the Boston Bruins, and we'll have to see what's going to happen with Tuukka Rask, but you'd have to think it committing that much money, and good for Linus Ullmark. I mean, obviously, you just got thrown to the Wolves every single night, and $5 million per for 4 seasons, definitely that's starter money. And the one thing I do want to talk about, guys, and again, leave your comments down below if you agree or disagree. I would love to see the total, if someone could do this or it has an article, I would love to see it. How much money was given or is going to be given to goaltenders over this next season? It has to be the most ever, because even backup goaltenders, I mean, we might talk about this in a little bit, but Martin Jones, who has been on the Sharks the last 4 years, had some of the best playoff runs the Sharks will ever have, but he got $2 million after being basically an AHL level goaltender for 3 seasons. $2 million as a backup. And it just feels like every single goaltender is just they're getting bank. It's no longer the starter gets $4 million and the backup gets under $1 million or maybe $1 million as a backup. It just, with the shift from, more of, goalies not playing 70 games anymore to playing like 50 and then the 30 split, goaltenders are just getting absolutely crazy money, especially backups. But Ullmark getting banked there at $5 million for Boston. I'm curious, what do the Boston Bruins think of that? Because that just signifies that Tuukka Rask, that's a lot in goaltending, and then you have Swayman too. Like, it's just going to be interesting to see how that goaltending situation, pans out. Michael Grandland, our next biggest contract, $5 million per for 4 seasons, so a matching deal with Allmark. He goes back to Nashville, and Grandland's a good player. I actually low-key wanted him to be signed with the Sharks. The Sharks we'll talk about in a little bit. Needed a third-line center, and I thought that Grandland would be a great fit, but Nashville, they went full rebuild, and they just needed bodies, it looked like. So Grandland comes back there, really good player, and, at 4 years, 29 years of age, not a lot of risk, and he's still a very, very effective player. It's Duchesne and Johansson that, there's a reason why Seattle didn't want him. So an interesting one is Alex Goligoski going to the Minnesota Wild on a 1-year deal, $5 million per. And you see that 1-year deal to Minnesota kind of just signifying how rough it is going to be in the next 3 seasons after this one. Again, we talked about it prior in another video. Suter and Parise being bought out doesn't really impact them that negatively this year. It's the $15 million in dead cap in the 3 and 4 years of those buyouts where you really just can't compete for a Stanley Cup with $15 million dead against the cap. And Goligoski signing that 1-year deal, it really looks like Minnesota's trying to go for it this year. And I don't know, on paper, they had a really good season. They had a really, really good season. But when the divisions go back to normal and how that's going to play out, because, man, I could totally see this team being a wild card team and getting out in the first round. And now you've got 3 years of basically... But Alex Goligoski going from Arizona to try. He's 36 years old, so I feel like he's in the kind of part of his career where he's going to keep signing 1-year deals to try and go for it. So Blake Coleman, this reminds me of the Chicago Blackhawks era where everyone, after they won cups, this is just cap casualties. Their third line, Tampa's third line, is a big reason why they won the Stanley Cup, and they literally just lost their entire third line. Yanni Gourde's the Seattle Kraken. Tyler Johnson now gone with the Chicago Blackhawks. Goudreau, is now in New York. And then Blake Coleman to the Calgary Flames, and Sutter looks to be building, a very Daryl Sutter team. They're going to be tough to play against, but this one is rough because, again, you have to play players who have, produced, and to sign these guys, especially Canadian teams. Canadian teams have a hell of a time signing free agents. And at basically $5 million for 6 seasons at 29 years of age, this is going to be one where potentially you're looking at a buyout after like 3 seasons. Maybe. Coleman's been really good, and he produced a lot in New Jersey before going to Tampa, and obviously being so important. But, that's a lot of money, and we'll see how he produces. But, he made bank here. And again, you win your cups, and you go and get that money. It's just... that's going to be a tough deal with the term that he got. Our next highlighted player, Brendan Saad, goes from Colorado, signs with the St. Louis Blues for 5 years at $4.5 million per, and that's honestly not a bad amount to sign. The thing I think that it kind of makes you think is, why didn't Colorado just give him that? But I think it's the term. 5 years, an awful lot to commit to him. He's only 28 years old. But, a really good signing for St. Louis. Obviously, they are going to lose Tarasenko. I mean, it looks like his agent is just lobbing bombs, trying to get him out of there. And St. Louis is just holding firm, waiting for a package to trade him that they aren't getting fleeced on. But Bouchard was a great trade, and then getting Saad, a lot more offensive, who had some really down years, but back a really good one with Colorado. And St. Louis really needed some offense, as they lost a lot of talent. Just throughout their whole roster. It's a really different squad from the Cup team. But yeah, this is definitely a good fit. I think 4.5, obviously that's a good AV. It's the term that's probably going to be tough on here, but St. Louis, again, needs forwards, and there we go. Speaking of St. Louis Blues forwards, Mike Hoffman, who signed a PTO. It's crazy to me that Mike Hoffman just walked into St. Louis. No one wanted him. This is what frustrates me. It's like, again, I'm not a general manager, obviously. We all aren't, but you have to think, like, when you see players like him, who's a very effective offensive player, just not getting a tryout anywhere. Obviously, I would love him on the Sharks, but he can't ever be on the Sharks for good reason. And he goes to Montreal, 3-year deal, 4.5 million. So definitely rejuvenate his career, and I think it's a decent fit. Again, Montreal really starved offensively. Mike Hoffman's going to be that power play, trigger man, and I think he was effective in St. Louis. St. Louis not comfortable to give him that kind of money. Again, they got Brandon Saad for the exact same amount of money, and he's a lot younger. So good signing for Montreal, and I think it was a smart move for St. Louis to kind of move on. All right, now we're into the Carolina portion of this, and my goodness, they had one of, if not for Chicago, the most interesting free agent draft and leading up to among all the teams, and because it was so odd, the Nedeljkovic trade to Detroit for a 3rd-round pick, because they didn't want to give him the money. Then they pay Freddie Anderson $4.5 for 2 seasons. Is just mind-boggling. It just kind of reeks of they wanted the whole firm. They didn't want to, break from their stance, and then they got backed into a corner and they trade Nedeljkovic. Then they, it just, why not pay your Calder Trophy nominee goaltender less money for a better performance than what you're going to get out of Freddie? It just very, very weird. And they lose Dougie Hamilton. They bring in D'Angelo, and say what you want about him on Twitter, completely null and void. The locker room stuff is just, I don't know how a team would want that. Again, I think he's a talented defenseman and a player, but my goodness, there's a reason as to what happened to him, and we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, just Carolina could be a complete tire fire, or they might have made enough moves to kind of mitigate their losses. I don't think they did. I think that they're going to take a step back, but we'll have to wait and see. Is that division's kind of wide open. It's the Atlantic that's really bad, but the Metro, a little bit more of a mess. I'm going to skim through. I'm not going to go in order here, just the ones that I kind of want to point out. Ryan Suter, obviously getting bought out, getting his bank at 36 years of age, going to Dallas for 4 years. At $3.65 million. This is very Vinny LeCavalier, because he is going to get a ton of money, and good for him. 4 years is an awful lot. You're going to end up with he's still a very effective defenseman, and honestly, at this cap hit, that's probably where he is. He's a complete minute eater, and that Dallas decor is gross. Heiskanen getting his money. You got Klingberg. You're going to have Suter now. They are going to be awfully tough to play against. And I think Dallas is a team that a lot of people forget about, because they go to the Cup in the COVID bubble season. They have a disappointing season this last one. But I think that they're going to be a really interesting team to watch, and that decor is going to be gross for at least another season or two. All right, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be much of an episode if we don't talk about what happened in Edmonton. Is Holland is just giving the middle finger to whoever replaces him in 3 years. Because, again, like I said, I said this on my stream. It looks like a guy who is just basically going to retire in 2 or 3 seasons, and he's just that's your problem. He signs Cody Ceci for 4 years at $3.25 million. Now, Cody Ceci definitely rejuvenated his career in Pittsburgh. 100%. He had a great season from the looks of it, and just I didn't watch him a lot, but I did watch him a lot when he was in Toronto and when he was in Ottawa, and their decor, they went out and made a lot of moves. They moved a lot of pieces around, and it just looks. Let me walk you through what they're about to ice. So Tyson Barrie, one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. Edmonton's problem wasn't scoring goals. He cannot play defense. If you look at his analytics and just fan reaction, he is not a very good defenseman in his own zone, and okay, that's fine. Then you've got Evan Bouchard, who is on the come up. That's fine. That's hope, right? You've got Cody Ceci, who has had one good season in the last 4. Duncan Keith, I mean, oh man, talk about a deal that you're going to regret in a couple of years. That is a very expensive defenseman, and his best years are obviously behind him. Darnell Nurse, stud, and then Chris Russell, basically. I don't think they got better defensively. Maybe for this year, maybe, Duncan Keith he's not going to be required to be a number 1 defenseman, which is great what they need. But man, yeah, I feel bad for Edmonton fans. Maybe it works out. The Pacific Division's awful, and I think that no matter what you have Draisaitl and McDavid, they can just drag you to a divisional round playoff spot in that conference or in that division. But my goodness, the Mike Smith deal for 2 years, it's just tough. I'll give you my personal takes just on my Sharks to close things out here. The Sharks, again, I try to remain as completely unbiased and realistic when it comes to the sports teams that I follow, maybe because I've watched sports and my specific favorite teams for so long, that I don't expect crazy things and I don't, just go in with blind hope because, well, as a Sharks fan, I've saw the playoffs for basically 20 seasons and they only made it to the finals once. So my expectations are tempered. The owner has come out and said they will not do a full rebuild. Okay, fine. They don't want to buy out guys, a lot of them, other than Martin Jones, which needed to be bought out. They can't buy out. They can't get rid of Carlson. They can't get rid of Vlasic. They can't get rid of Burns, maybe, but that'd be salary retained. He's old, and it's still a big cap hit, right? You've got the Evander Kane stuff going on. There is just a lot of immovable pieces. However, they did have quite a bit of cap space going into this, and it was their bottom six, specifically their third-line center, as well as goaltending as a whole, they needed to fix. Absolutely, it could not be the same. So the Sharks core, in all honesty, is one of top 10, 12 cores in the league still. Honestly, I think a lot of teams would be happy to switch with the Sharks to roll out Evander Kane, assuming everything works out, but who knows. Evander Kane, Couture, Hurdle, Meyer, Carlson, and Burns. Regardless of what you want to say about Carlson, the contract's not worth it. He is still a very, very good defenseman offensively. And Burns still drives play like few others. Again, in their own zone, they're absolute disasters, but nonetheless. Then you take that, you've got 2 years, again, in the bad Pacific Division. Just make the playoffs like Moneyball. Just get in, and you'll see what happens. Montreal just made it to the finals. So this, if that doesn't prove in terms of hockey, just get to the playoffs and see what happens. I don't know what does. So with that being said, they need a third-line center because Dylan Gambrell is not a third-line center, and he might not even be an NHL player. They went out and got Nick Bonino for $2 million, which I thought was a great signing, honestly. Again, very little risk there. 2 years at $2 million per. If it doesn't work out, flip him at the deadline. That's fine. However, I think, again, he really solves that third-line center role so that Couture and Hurdle can worry about the top six. Then they went out and got Cogliano for a year at $1 million. Again, very low risk, but again, replaces the just revolving AHL level talent on that bottom six and really helps out in terms of the locker room. I think that those guys, that was a really big piece. That locker room is a mess ever since Pavelski and Thornton left. And I think that, again, he is infinitely better than whatever they were going to put in. So Bonino and Cogliano makes their bottom six a lot stronger. Also, on the penalty kill, Nieto and Cogliano is a phenomenal penalty kill tandem, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, their penalty kill is going to be very, very good. And then getting Aiden Hill for a second-round pick, they haven't signed him yet. They're going to go to arbitration, which is gross. I mean, not really wanting how you want to start a relationship. And James Reimer for 2 years at 2.25. James Reimer comes back to the Sharks. A lot of people don't remember. He was a Shark on their cup run as a backup goaltender. Again, say what you want. I don't think he's all that great. It is going to be better than what they had the last 3 years. The Sharks have had the worst save percentage in the NHL at even strength for 3 years, and that includes the year that they went to the conference finals against St. Louis. A lot of people forget that team outscored all of their problems, and they can still do that. But James Reimer and Aiden Hill, they just have to have a 900 save percentage, and they're already a huge increase in improvement from what the Sharks had with Martin Jones and whatever backup or other goaltender they went with. So that being said, I am happy. I think that a wild card spot or that third spot in the division is still realistic, but they could also finish in the bottom 10 in the league. The one thing that sucks is that because they're not allowed to go into a rebuild, the team can't afford it, I'm a firm believer of either get good fast or get bad fast, and they can't get bad fast, and they can't get that good very quickly. So, with the draft picks and whatnot, I'm excited, but, again, tempered expectations. Maybe that third spot in the wild card. I think that the Central is going to have both wild card spots, but we'll see. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's reaction video on the free agents. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Again, I do these videos to try and spark some conversation among hockey fans, and I like reading your comments and seeing your takes because, again, I don't get to watch all these guys, so let me know. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.